Previously on
with our cricket chats, and a man that's not afraid to give a lot of people hell, especially when it comes to cricket, is the lucid and very competent Telford Vice. He joins us this afternoon on Ballz Visual Radio. Telford, how's it? It's always good to have you on the show.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and how did the photo shoot go? They must work hard to make you look good.
New respect for Kerry McGregor, I reckon, and not only because she has to be married to, who's that fella? Neil McKenzie.
Yeah, oh yeah?
The ceiling falling from the ceiling all over the house and, stuff like that. It's not fun. So if she can still stand there and look like Kerry McGregor, well, it's good for all of us.
What, did they have you draped seductively over a four-poster bed or what?
I'm afraid not, no. Thank God for that. The four-poster bed wouldn't have been the same again. But,
No, now tell me what it was for.
I've recently changed jobs. I used to write for Business Day for my daily crust,
Yeah.
and I've recently moved to the Times Media Group. So I'm going to be writing a column in the Sunday Times from this Sunday.
Oh, great! Well, there you go.
Called The Leading Edge, not Cole.
You join some leading journalists, including the likes of Dan Retief.
Well, yes.
No. Well, I must say I enjoy both your and Dan's comments and writings in various newspapers. Well, the ones that you guys used to write for. Telford, let's chat cricket. Let's talk about the Proteas and what many are calling a woeful performance at the World T20. And as I said before we got you on the line, I see the chokers tag is now surfacing. It's inevitable when the Proteas fail to perform at a big event. Is it fair to pull it out again here?
No, probably not, because they did some stupid things. They chose some stupid teams and they played some players in stupid places. So that's why they lost. They didn't choke. The difference this time is that it's AB de Villiers who's calling them chokers, which is a twist on the whole C word. So I think they finally made peace with the fact, and it is a fact, that they have choked in the past. They've owned up, they've manned up, and they said, right, we choked. But, now that they've simply lost, quite badly, twice, now they seem to think they've choked, when in fact they haven't. They just got things wrong. And the other team played better than they did. And that tends to happen in cricket. I suppose the South Africans, we're not used to that from these fellas. Generally they're beating themselves. But this time, for the most part, the other team beat them. I mean, Morne Morkel's, 6, full toss 6. That's not the greatest thing. You don't want to see that. But Morne Morkel this time didn't look like a hamster in the headlights. He just looked like somebody who got it wrong, and the damn fool thing got hit for 6. And that will happen in competitive sport. Otherwise it'd be very boring. Yeah,
and you make a good point, because essentially we beat ourselves, and the other teams beat us. But when you are relying on other teams to beat other teams in different games for you to go through, then you know that there's a big problem.
Yes, that's kind of one hand on the cliff stuff, and the drop is sure to come, because the ifs and buts and the this and that and the whatnot. You far rather want to be in control of your own destiny, and of course they got that wrong and lost those games. And you don't want to be relying on other people to get into the next round or into the semi-finals, because what kind of mindset do you then take into those, go and fight it out with 3 other teams, when you know that you're the kid with the bursary, you shouldn't really be there. So you don't want to go in that way. I don't think South Africa have the mindset to be able to do that properly. Even if they had got in, I think they would have been undermined by that very situation. So rather they lose properly, like they did, and come home and go back to the drawing board and start again.
Tell me a little bit about the team and the selections that you disagreed with, because you mentioned it earlier, you're playing players in the wrong positions, playing incorrect players. Elaborate a little bit on that.
Well, I honestly thought, and I got it wrong, that Jacques Kallis would take this tournament by storm. I really did. I thought, the man can do anything. He could probably, fly the plane home himself if he needed to. But I got that badly wrong. That wasn't the case. And I think part of the problem was that Kallis didn't fire. And then when they went and played Kallis and Hashim Amla in the same side, I don't think you can really do that. I saw a tweet from Herschel Gibbs. It's not my original idea. Herschel Gibbs actually tweeted that. You can't play Kallis and Amla in the same T20 side. It's just silly. And when I sat back and thought about it, it is silly. You simply can't do that. And hey, Richard Levy is either Morne Steyn of cricket or something. It's just send him home to go and sort his game out. You can't just keep watching him fail. Yes, one great innings in Hamilton in New Zealand, fantastic, but you can't build a career on that. And it may be a lesson also that T20 cricket, you're not gonna learn how to play properly if you're simply a T20 specialist. You need to go and learn how to play properly in the B section and the amateur leagues and those kinds of things. And yes, I know Richard Levy hasn't just walked onto a cricket ground and fallen out of the sky and done this, but he needs to go and to learn how to play first-class cricket properly, possibly before he comes back and tries this kind of thing again.
I hear you, and I take your point, but I almost feel as though Levy got made a bit of a scapegoat for what was generally a pretty poor batting effort by the whole team.
Yes, that is true, and of course, let's never forget, and this goes for any player in any sport, Richard Levy did not pick himself. It wasn't as if he kept sending himself out there when he couldn't buy a run. Yes, absolutely right, and there's a whole host of people behind him who should have been able to pick up the slack if he messed it up. But the fact that they persist with someone who's so patently out of form is a worry. You can't do that. The oak is you're messing up his confidence even further by sending him out there and out there and out there again. He's going to struggle against spin. He's going to struggle on those kinds of surfaces. So you've got to have plan B, C, D, and E. For when it doesn't happen. Maybe they did, and all those plans failed. But it's also the unsettledness of all that. You're never quite sure, what the batting order was going to be. And still, after this tournament, I don't have too much of an idea of what South Africa's best T20 side is, because the thing kept changing. So, and I'm not sure. Maybe you can do that with Pakistan, who, are a complete schizophrenic cricket team, and a couple of other less conservative cricket teams. And let's face it, South Africa is a conservative cricket culture. There are certain things that we do, and we do them properly. The other things we don't do so well, and we suss this out. We know where it is. But then if you arrive there and just throw it all in the air like you just don't care, it's not going to work with the South African way of thinking about cricket at this stage. I appreciate that perhaps Gary Kirsten is trying to change all that, but it's not working so far in those terms.
It would have been a very, very harsh lesson for AB de Villiers to learn as captain, and there were times during that Pakistan game where you just wanted to pull your hair out in frustration and question his decision making. Do you have any hair left to pull out?
No. But yes, exactly, and I think de Villiers has owned up to the fact that things move so quickly, and he's so new at this, and it's all a bit scary. And I've seen the look on his face when he said this, and he absolutely does mean it. And he is quite a young captain still, but it's an unforgiving business. You need to learn, and you need to learn quickly, and that's why you have a whole dressing room full of flunkies like fielding coaches and batting coaches and bowling coaches and everybody else to smack you upside the head when you get it wrong. So it's not so much AB de Villiers. What about that dressing room full of flunkies who are sitting there smiling at the camera, and not doing their jobs? And those are the people who irritate me more than AB de Villiers' performance, because how hard is it, to stand on the trophy and say, listen, you need this, you need that, don't do this. It's not that hard. But that didn't happen often enough.
Yeah. At the end of the day, though, should we read too much into this? Because you also hear people saying, yeah, T20, it's hit and giggle stuff. Is this a cause for concern, or should we just put it down to a learning curve for both Gary Kirsten and AB de Villiers and see how they move on from it?
Well, it is, it's a lot more hit and giggle than other formats of cricket. I think that is probably obvious. But this is the second time it's happened now, because remember they went off to Zimbabwe and played that unofficial thing. And the second best cricket team in this country, in our country, couldn't beat teams from Bangladesh and Zimbabwe. That is a shocking fact. That should never happen when you consider where the level of South African cricket and the levels of Bangladesh and Zimbabwean cricket. Couldn't beat them, for goodness sake. Beat them, yes. Couldn't beat them all ends up every time they played them, because that's what you need to do if you are South Africa and they are Zimbabwe and Bangladesh. They couldn't do that. They've gone off to Sri Lanka now in this tournament, and they've just messed up there. So I think they will have to have a look at it. It's not, if this was what happened on the tour to England, for instance, in the Test series, then obviously it would be a lot more serious. But let's not murder them all when they arrive at Tambo tomorrow morning, because it's not that bad. And I'm sure, and as much as they will deny it, a lot of them will have their ideas and their minds fixed on the Tour to Australia, which is coming up at the end of this month. And then they've got to go off and defend that hard-won #1 world test ranking that they won in England and won so well. So that is a much more important thing, and they wouldn't be human if they weren't thinking of that, even in the middle of this tournament. So I don't hate them. they've driven me mad in the past, but this time they simply lost. They played badly and they lost. That's what happens when you play badly.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you though, it surely must be a concern when you see your experienced campaigners though, like your Cullises, like your Morkels, performing so badly though. Is it a subcontinent thing, or is it just guys that are tired and perhaps past their best?
I think it's guys who are tired to a large extent because they've been on the road since June. Ashley Mamela's been in every series. He's played in everything. He's been up there since June. Feel for somebody like Lopsy Tsotobe, who's also been on every series and hasn't played a game. So there are a few issues there they need to sort out with regards to that. So somebody like Roman Peterson is another one who's been out there since June, since the start of the Tour of England. So it's been a long trek for these oaks. So there are things to sort out. Maybe Jacques Kallis should now. I think this experiment, and it was an experiment to play him in the T20 format. You should now just say, okay, that's it, Jacques Kallis. You're a test player. If we need you in the one days, fantastic. We'll get hold of you. But I don't think we can now fool ourselves any longer, especially myself, because I really thought he was going to be a star. Jacques Kallis, days of T20 for Jacques Kallis are over. But I really think he's probably the only one who we can now just put out the pasture in the T20 sense. The others, they had a poor tournament. They didn't play well. That's why they're coming on.
Yeah. I'd like to also chat to you quickly about the Champions League T20. I see Neil Collins giving me gears on Twitter about this thing. We spoke to Jacques Faul earlier on, and I asked him if it was the first time this tournament was coming to South Africa. But honestly, I can't keep track with all these bloody T20s going on all over the place, and each has got different names, and then there's a new sponsor. Are you looking forward to that? Are you going to any of the games?
Yes, I'm going to have to be covering that. I am looking forward to it, but almost not at a team level. I'm looking forward to seeing Tendulkar here and Shahid Afridi and Brett Lee and those others. The actual teams, I'm not sure if I care a fig who wins or who doesn't. Especially when you consider that Morne Morkel, Albie Morkel and Fatu Plessis should be playing for the Titans, but they're not. They're playing for IFL teams.
Yeah.
So, and that just kind of scrambles the traditions of sport for me, just in a little way. And also when you consider, they're starting off with 14 teams, but they're going to end up with 10 after the qualification stage. So you've got 10 teams, and 4 of them are from the IPL. So almost half your field, comes from one country. There's something wrong with that. It's a good money spinner, and it will keep the most prominent players on screens, and they're going to be all in one place, and the fans in out of Mongolia are going to be fantastically happy to turn on their screens and see Chris Gale and Sachin Tendulkar and Shahid Afridi and AB de Villiers all playing in the same place. So it's a wonderful television product. But as a sporting spectacle or as a sporting event, I'm not so sure. It's good marketing, but the cricket, yeah, maybe.
I just wonder how much interest is going to, how much interest is going to receive here in South Africa, given all the cricket that we've seen and all the sport that goes on.
That is a good question. It's going to be interesting to see. They told us this morning that there are something like 3. It was an interesting way the man said it. The tournament director, Nasia Pierre, said we have about 350 or 380,000 tickets available. I'm not sure what's happening to the 30,000 in the middle there, but anyway. And he said we sold 70,000 of them. They've sold about 70,000 tickets already. This is bearing in mind that people are not terribly sure who's going to play because of the qualification stage. And they've already sold 30% of the tickets to the final. So the Wanderers, which holds around 30,000, they've sold 10,000 of those. So there does seem to be some kind of, there's quite a bit of interest. I've spoken to people from Centurion, and they're a bit worried. They say their ticket sales aren't going that well. Wanderers is doing better. And that's, for me, is an indication that Supersport Park actually do their jobs too well. You can walk up to Supersport Park on the day of a big game and buy tickets. And it's not a schlep to find parking and all these things. Whereas I'm afraid that the Wanderers is probably the most user-unfriendly cricket ground I know.
Yeah.
So people will make their plans long before match day for that. So, it's interesting watching those figures. It'll be interesting how they go up.
Well, it's nice to see the Wanderers. It's been a long time, I think, since the Wanderers. Hopefully, it does sell out. It'll be a long time since the Wanderers was that full.
It will be, and that depends. Obviously, I mean, if the Lions do something and get going and get some momentum behind them, well, that'll be fantastic. The Titans, without those 3 players that we mentioned, I'm not sure how they're going to manage that. But funnier things have happened in this strange old game.
Final question before we let you go, Telford. Neil Collins on Twitter wants to know your thoughts on Quinton de Kock and John Chuck Morris at the Lions. He thinks they should both be in the T20 side.
Well, Mr. Morris is a very fine young man. I had the pleasure of speaking to him for the first time this weekend. And in fact, before I spoke to him, he was kind of milling about and whatnot, waiting for the captains to get interviewed. And he looked up at the scoreboard and he saw his bowling figures on the scoreboard, 12 for 101, and it was a record, and 8 for 44, and he went screaming across, not screaming, he went running, bolting across the outfield and whipped out his cell phone and took a picture of it. So, which just makes him such a human person. Quinton de Kock, there's a whole thing brewing with wicket keepers in this country, because I did write a piece, apologies to retread it for you, in the Sunday Times saying, if the most important thing about a wicket keeper is his batting, and that's the modern myth, then suddenly there's a whole bunch of keepers out there who are coming to the party as batsmen. Quinton de Kock got a 194 the other day, and stuff like that. Not even keeping. But so I think Quinton de Kock is a talent for the future. He's obviously very raw and very young, but certainly a young man in a hurry, and I think he'll certainly go places.
Telford, we as always appreciate your input and your thoughts on Ballz Visual Radio. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, and good luck with that column in the Sunday Times. I hope that's not your only bit of work.
No, I now write for 7 newspapers. That is a terrifying thought.
All the best, and we look forward to catching up with you, especially on the Proteas Tour Down Under.
Cool stuff.
Thanks, Telford.
Sure.
There we go, Telford Weiss, joining us post photo shoot, giving us his thoughts on the Proteas performance at the World T20, and also on who he thinks could possibly be included and who should be left out. As I'm sure Gary Kirsten does a little bit of soul searching after that poor performance.
2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mondays to Fridays live on Ballz.co.za. Ballz.co.za.